If you have a question of where this $10,000 came from, it means you skipped the training. I've done so many examples, where the money comes from, etc. So Andrew calls and says, I'm representing as a buyer. He gets this magical thing called a PSA. What's a PSA? Purchase and sale agreement. It's a Subto deal with a seller finance note, which would be called a hybrid, right? It's part Subto, part seller finance. This PSA goes to where? It goes to the title company. They open escrow, okay? The PSA is going to have some basic terms on it, okay? And purchase and sale agreement, that's what that stands for. Purchase and sale agreement, PSA, okay? Why do we use it as a PSA, not just a purchase agreement? Why is it not just called a purchase agreement? Well, because it's used for the seller is selling and the buyer is buying, right? Purchase and sale agreement. So it works for both parties. So in there, you're going to have the purchase price, $650,000. You're then going to have EMD. Guys, EMD is Gator 0 and Gator 1 strategy. What is the difference between Gator 0 and Gator 1? Gator 0 means if I'm a Gator and I'm new to Gator and I don't have my lines of credit yet, no lines of credit, I'm going to go and wrestle other Gators. Write this down. The reason you would do Gator 0 is one of two reasons. One, you're brand new. You haven't watched the training on lines of credit. You haven't built your lines of credit yet. And so you're like, I don't want to wait for my lines of credit. I would rather go find the deals, go find the opportunities, like Heather Torres, for example. Okay, Heather Torres sent me a text message and she says, hey, I've got a deal. Will you bring the money to the table? What strategy is she using? If she's coming to me, she goes, somebody needs EMD money and I don't have the money. Or even if she had the money, she doesn't want to use her money. What strategy is she using? Gator 0, right? She's wrestling my money into the deal. Gator 0. You would only use that if you're brand new or if maybe the deal itself is larger than what capital you have. Let's say you get a credit card, a $10,000 credit card, and now you got $10,000 you could go and swipe and go pay for EMD and whatever else, or a line of credit or whatever else. And somebody comes to you and says, I've got a deal for $25,000 that you can, Heather, how much money would we make on that deal? Do you know? $10,000. Thank you. So Heather found a Subto student here. I'll draw this out where Heather's the Gator. She's green. And she found a Subto student that has a deal that he's like, I need $24,000 on, and that's basically his EMD, earnest money deposit. So Heather has to ask the question of, do I have the money? Guys, if you're a new Gator, ask yourself these questions, write these things down. She says, do I have the money? Do I need moral support? I would say that the number one thing that Heather probably needs is that. So you guys will ask that question when you're new as well, is that you should be collaborating with each other. If you collab, what ends up happening is somebody with a little bit more experience can vet the deal. What does vet the deal mean? It means verify that it's a good deal, verify the numbers are good. They can also help you out with the paperwork. They can ask the questions that you're not asking. This would be Gator 0. It's like ground level. She's wrestling my money into the deal. Heather and I end up splitting the profits somehow, some way. It might be a 50-50 thing. You are Gator 0. You are finding opportunities and using other people's money. That is Gator 0. So if I'm in Gator 0 and I'm starting out, these are the questions I got to ask. Do I need the moral support? Do I want to collaborate? Do I need somebody else's experience? Do I want to vet? I would suggest for the first 1 to 10 deals, you do a collaboration with somebody else. You and another Gator that has done deals, go do deals together. Okay, that's my suggestion. Are you going to follow it 100% of the time? Probably not. But that's what I would do. Okay, so Heather and I will make $10,000 for 10 days. Here's what ends up happening. Heather comes to me and she says, hey, Pace, do you want a JV on this deal? So Heather has $0 in the deal. And I go, yeah, I'd love to do a deal with you. That's amazing. I have $24,000. So we wire the money where? Do we ever wire the money to the person? Never wire money to a human being. Always wire money to a title company or a closing attorney. After you check the paperwork, after you vet the deal, after you verify, after you ask the question of, do I want a loan to own? Right? All of those questions need to be asked. This is why doing a deal with a more experienced Gator is always important. Heather, I don't know what her and I will work out, but let's just say she says, I'll take $5K. And I go, great, I'll take $5K. We both made $500 a day with my money and her connection. Does this make sense how Gator Zero works? Heather is basically playing the middleman. If you have a question of where this $10,000 came from, it means you skipped the training. I've done so many examples, where the money comes from, etc. On this specific deal, where this money is coming from is this Subto student is getting a larger loan when he purchases the property. Okay, so he is waiting right now. So you have to wait for a loan to go through. However, when you're doing a deal like right here, you got EMD as a requirement by law. It is a law. It is a required law to have consideration on a contract. Consideration means I am showing you that I'm serious about this transaction. Okay, it is a legal requirement to have consideration. A legal requirement. Consideration means I've put up money to show this seller I'm serious. Okay, so let's go faster through this. So here's what ended up happening. Andrew got it under contract. It has a $10,000 EMD. He then used a Gator. A Gator came in and funded that $10,000 EMD. What ends up happening then is Andrew's like, I don't have a buyer. So the person who helped him find a buyer, his name is Eric. Eric ends up saying, ooh, I know a buyer. Eric is actually my camera guy. Eric is the one that brought this deal to me. He brought it to Pace. So Eric basically co-wholesaled a deal and he took the purchase price of $650,000. Andrew added $21,000 as his assignment fee, okay, for finding the deal. Eric added $5,000 for bringing me the deal. So he's getting $5,000. And the Gator only had to have $10,000 out for about, I think it was like 10, 12 days. They made, I think, $4,000 on the deal. Guess what else? There's somebody else that made money on this transaction. Another person that made money on this transaction is the transaction coordinator, the person who did all the paperwork to put all this together, the Gator paperwork, the paperwork for me, all that kind of stuff. Her name is Shelly. She's on my team. She made $1,000 for doing the deal. What ends up happening is I have to now come up with, let's circle the money that I got to come up with. Okay, Pace has got to come up with the $4,000. I've got to come up with the $21,000, the $5,000 that Eric made. I've got to come up with the $52,000 that the seller wanted as a down payment. And then I have another $3,000 in closing costs. All right. So I have to come up with, what was that? 73, 81. I basically into this deal about $85,000 in cash. Where did I get my $85,000 from? I got my $85,000 from a PML Gator. They brought in the $85,000 that covered all of my costs. This person gets paid by the Gator. They get paid. That gets paid. That gets paid. That gets paid. Everything. This Gator is basically doing Gator 6.0, which is long-term. And so they're giving me a 1-year loan at 12% interest. So my payment on this is $850 a month this person's receiving. There's a Gator that made money here. And there's a Gator that made money on the back end more long-term. Let's say in 4 or 5 years, this buyer right here, what will I do in 4 or 5 years? Refinance. If I go to refinance, a Gator can help me with a refinance with Gator 2.0. Did we already cover what Gator 0 is today? Yes, we covered that today. We covered that pretty in depth. Gator 1 is where you are going and getting your own lines of credit. You're doing the same thing, but you're not using other people. Gator is other people's money. This allows you as a newer Gator to get into Gator without having to worry about getting lines of credit. Here, you're like, I want to make more money. I'd rather control it. I'm going to start using my own lines of credit that, again, as a Gator, you get. Is there any way you could ever say in Gator, you don't have access to money on Gator 0 and Gator 1? Physically impossible. I've put up my own money for that. You have access to so much money. Physically impossible for you to say, I don't have access to money. You have access to money. Are you sharing that with people? That's the question you got to ask yourself. Are you telling people, hey, I have money. Hey, I have money. Hey, I have money. Hey, I have money. Hey, I have money.